My name is Andres Sanchez, Andres Business Finance, and I am here today again with Mike Menahem from GOVBIDPRO.com, bringing you the latest in what is going on in government contracting. So Mike, I'm really excited to talk to you today because we discussed a little bit about what happened last week compared to this week, especially in their certain realms or industries. But Mike, how are you today? How's the weather out there, by the way, in Florida?
Yes, I'm in Bradenton, which is near Sarasota. We have some lightning. Hurricane season just started, so it is what it is. You know, we're keeping an eye on government's doing and the growth areas in terms of the cuts that were made. We're not really focused on that. What we're working on is saying, okay, where is government spending? And the areas are cybersecurity and the artificial intelligence, as you may know, and the audience certainly knows. And you certainly know, Andres, that's a growth area. And so we're going to start to see a lot more in the data centers growth and the construction of data centers in areas where there's not a lot of precipitation, desert states like New Mexico and Arizona. So just kind of a bullet point there that we're going to see some movement in the data center growth area.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Look, everybody asks me all the time, and I was talking actually to a friend of mine. His son, he is a nuclear engineer. All right. So he went to school for nuclear engineer. And I said, okay, so why did he took interest in that? Well, because he knows that the energy that it needs to be produced now in the world, this is not just a problem with the United States, but in the world, the demand for energy is huge. So the nuclear energy sector is probably going to grow not only here in the United States, of course. You know, with our economy, we're going to have great demands on energy. But that opens basically a question. And that question in particular is, how are we going to fulfill all of those needs for energy? So I know that we were discussing about what trades is the government looking for to fulfill government contract needs. So, Mike, you just mentioned data centers. So tell me a little bit about why do you think that certain trades are going to be in high demand in the next years due to this?
Yeah, sure. So these data centers have to be built, whether it's being built by Facebook or Google or some of these other big IT companies or the government themselves for the service of, whether it's, let's say, it's a data center for example, for patient record keeping. Right. So they need this data center for all the patients that are in this VA hospital. So the trades that are involved, we're going to need to build from the ground up these brand new data centers. They're not going to, it's actually more affordable to build brand new than it is to take something that's existing and refurbish it, a refurbished building. So they're going to take a piece of land, and then concrete is going to be a big thing, roofing, walls, windows, HVAC, boilers, plumbing, just to name a few of the trades that are involved. And then you're talking about not just the construction of the data center, but also the management of the data center by the IT people, right? Managing the data center, then the surveillance of it. Then you have the facility management, which includes the janitorial service. And we're talking even paper products in the restrooms or the lunchroom, where people have to eat, and the refrigeration and the electricity and the lighting. All this stuff has to be planned out, and the government builds to spec. So we have clients that they don't want to deal with this. They're tradespeople. That's their thing, whether it's roofing or windows or floors or what have you. They want us to take care of the B2G piece, which is the NICS code, the North American Industry Code Standard. We'll take care of that. The registration for a cage code on SAM.gov, we'll take care of that. That's what we offer, the complimentary consultation, to get these trades folks on the Google Meet call just like this and say, what is it that you need? And I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I want to touch on it, is the cash flow piece, where you're not going to have a non-payment. If you do your job and you cross the T's and dot the I's, the government will pay you. I've been doing this almost 20 years. If we did the job right, they always paid. That's important for cash flow.
For sure. I mean, trust me, everything we look when we are discussing with any company, their plans for growth, you know, like, okay, I want to get into government contracting? I want to get into maybe, you know, doing contracts for certain private sector demand. Well, what happens with most private sector demand is that there's a lot of, you know, up and downs. Okay. So the flavor of the year or the flavor of the next couple of years, this is what they're planning to do. There's a company that is growing. But then guess what? Then you get to, basically maximizing the expansion, and then that's it. Then you need to look for the next company that is looking to grow. Well, guess what? The government is always going to need you. People have a conversation with you, sit down, say, okay, I do construction, let's say in this case, all right? And then they say, okay, I do this type of construction. Then you can basically make a determination, an analysis, the consultation, to see if there is an opportunity for your particular trade to be able to suffice into the government contracting. That's why I think it's very important. I think we mentioned this before, but I wanted to tie it in with our discussion. One of the things that we look for when we're talking to companies is you really part of the industry that is needed to support the government facilities, let's say in this case, all right? So you mentioned the VA, okay? So if the VA is going to need data centers to be able to store patients' records, management, the demand for energy, guess what? All of that needs to either be built or maintained because that's needed. You already know that just basically, this is numbers from 2023, how big of a sector is the VA into all of the government spending. So we need to continue to provide it, and we need to be able to be ready. So that's why people talking to you is a very important thing, really understanding what the opportunity is. Because they might not know that those opportunities are there, and you know it.
And I want to put an exclamation point on something you're talking about is that's part of our job here at GovBIDPRO is in terms of being B2G, business to government, sales managers for the tradespeople, for IT companies, for medical device companies. A part of our job in terms of process, let's talk about that for a little bit. In terms of process, one of the pieces that we provide is the research, like you just mentioned, and say to a company, I was just talking to a company late last week, and they, long story short, they're in construction. And I said, look, what you need to do is go to FEMA, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They're a part of DHS, Department of Homeland Security. So that's going to be where there's some growth in terms of DOD, DHS, Homeland Security, DOD's defense, VA, then, Social Security is not going to go away. So those are the big four. You're going to see some drops in energy, in Department of Education, and Department of Energy. But that's what I want to share with the audience is the research piece of saying, okay, creating that bid strategy and saying, this is what we want to do in the next 24 months. And we want to get in and get a VA contract. That's going to be a 5-year contract. Okay. So that's something that, we talk about. Or a company might say, look, we want 20 purchase orders a year, 20 or 10, whatever the number is. Okay, so that's going to, you have to quote. So again, that creates what's your bid strategy. So, and then we talk about that and it's custom for each client.
Each client. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Walk us through these steps, because that's the thing that most people don't even know where to look for. But that's why basically, this visual, it tells us what your job is to do and to help small businesses. So walk us through the process. How long will it take basically for you to do a consultation?
Yeah, sure. So the consultation is about 15 to 20 minutes at most. I'm not going to keep you on. I want to get to know your business. I want to get to know your past performance. I want to get to know your goals. Those are really the three. I want to know who you are, what you're about, what's your past performance. Are you a brand new company? You was startup? Have you had a lot of past performance in terms of maybe you built, like you and I, Andres, offline, we talked about that concrete company that did the Applebee's, and they're going to build, they're only going to build so many Applebee's, right? So, and then what are your goals? Do you want to be 50% B2B and 50% B2G? And then you want to talk about, okay, do you want to do federal or do you want to do SLED, state local education? Do you want to do, I have a company that sells software. It's perfect for airports. Somebody thought about this and said, this is for airports. Airports are managed by the transportation authorities, but they do get federal funds. So that's where the tradespeople also come in. Our company, it's bring your own device type of software. I said, this is perfect for airports. How many hundreds of airports do we have in this country? So back to the process piece is we do the research and the bid strategy. Then we do the bid capture. That's a time saver. We go into sam.gov and look for the bids. We go into GSA eBuy and look for the bids, send you the bids. You, the client, are going to look and say, I want to do this one. I don't want to do this one. I do want to do this one. Then we create an Excel sheet, almost like a Google Sheets, and say, in our CRM, this is the bids we're going to put. We're going to create the proposal. That's what you're hiring us to do. And then we would submit, or you would submit. Most of the time it's electronic. On the back end, after you win, that's called post-award. On the back end is the post-award contract management, which we'll get into. But for us, it's very simple. And we try to keep it simple. Find the bid, process the bid, send the proposal, the quote in, submit, find, process, send. All that stuff takes time, and it takes experience to look at the right bids. So you can do your business. We can do, we have a saying here at GOVBIDPRO, our business is government. So there you go. And the other thing that
Absolutely,
I want to talk
Mike.
about too,
No,
just to throw this in, Andreas, is the clients have to be prepared. So they have to have their website, make sure to have a domain name, not a Gmail email address, your phone number, your LLC and corporation, all that stuff set up. Then we can when we have that, we can go get what's called a CAGE code, CAGE, commercial and government entity. Once we have that, we can go to the government and say, here's our capability statement. And we have templates to create quotes and proposals. So it builds on itself. You start off with the phone number. You could go get a Google office number, not just a cell phone number, get a real email address with your name at yourcompany.com. Get your CAGE code UEI number, get all your registrations. And by the way, each state has its own registration. So that takes time. I have a client right now that's in Arizona that we are registering them in Texas and Florida and the Carolinas, both Carolinas and Tennessee and Georgia. So that's taking time. And so we're saving them time by doing it for them.
well, and not only that, look, this is the way I see it. We discuss with many field experts on different things. Okay. We talk to engineers that are in the construction sector that understand, let's say in this case for a company, what's called cost segregation. Well, they're expert fields, and that's a field of expertise. Your field of expertise, Mike, is into understanding the government appetite for contracting and what are the requirements and how to be effective into winning those bids according to each unique situation and profile of the business of the client, right? Because there is an element
Right.
of, we can talk about broad, let's say, industries, but in the end, each industry in particular is going to have certain elements of success, and failure, basically what it's called the ingredients. Walk us through, I'm going to share basically this, the screen. So walk us through how, let's say the construction sector, how does it work for the construction sector to get into government contracting? If you're already a construction company and you already provide the services for the private sector, government contracting is going to be demanding a lot in this sector. So please walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Is there might be a purchase order out there. There might be a contract out there that's good for, say, a 1 or 2 person operation. But then you've got whole contracts that are for general contractors. So what's going to happen is the government's going to put an RFQ or RFP out on a website like sam.gov. It depends on the brevity of the project. If, let's say, they say, okay, we want the whole data center, an entire data center built, and you have to have your subcontractors, and it really depends on the government contract manager. So our counterpart on the other side, that's really the key to it. And what's called the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, what regulation are attached to the contract? You can't do things that are flimsy, that's for sure. But what you can do, so some contract managers, they're by the book. You got to cross the T's, dot all the I's. They're going to put an RFP out. And that RFP is going to be this PDF that's on sam.gov in a particular bid. Okay, we are going to go find this thing under a specific NICS code, North America Industry Code Standard. That's what we do. We have to deal with that. the audience, the tradespeople, they don't have to deal with that. We're going to take a look at this PDF. This PDF will include, to answer your question in terms of process, it will include a sample contract. It'll include the specification of the data center they want built, where they want it built, when they want it built, when do you have to, when they need to have the certificate of occupancy, when they have to be operational. Do they want a management company to own the data center and they'll lease it? The government will lease it from the property managers. So there's that piece. So the construction company is going to have to deal with that too. Or, hey, they're going to say, look, no, the government's going to buy the data center and the government's going to own it. Where we're seeing some movement in that area right now, just to let the audience know that this Trump-Vance administration wants to sell by auction commercial property. So I don't think they want to buy more, is what I'm saying. If they want to build new data centers, they want us, the private sector, to own the data centers, and they'll lease it from us. That's an opportunity. They'll lease it from us, these warehouses, these data centers, for the next 20 years.
Good point, Mike, because look, we're going through a reevaluation of asset allocation on the government as well. So we're looking at what we have and we're looking at saying, okay, what is the use? What is the utility of what we have? What is it being used for? And if we need to change our utility allocation, well, for the greater good of the country, that's what we're going to do, right? I mean, that's the way I see it. So data centers are going to be necessary. Why? Because we want to protect and house a lot of our technology, our IP. Data centers, manufacturing. There's several lines of manufacturing that are going to be let's say, basically encouraged, to be able to be brought here. What you're seeing, and we discussed this last time with Qualcomm and other, basically technology industries. You see it even, with its own Tesla, where they were getting ready to build their next location or their next factory in Mexico, and then they decided to do it here in Texas. So we are seeing, okay, there's reshoring, nearshoring of things. Right. We're going to continue to see that. So we're going to need to be able to suffice all of that growth. Mike, also, I want to make sure that people understand that this information is made for people to get an idea of how government contracting is so important in the next years, that it's not going away, that we need small businesses to supply and to maintain and to manufacture and to construct a lot of our infrastructure. I want to point out the information that they need to have and where they can contact you. In this case, Mike, I want to leave them with the list. Can you walk us through the list real quick so people get ready to call you?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yep. So I do want to just mention one more thing. The government only buys things, and we're talking about $1 trillion budget. I don't want to take a lot of time, but what's important to the audience is that about 26% of our federal budget, that's just the federal, not state, local education, not the states, not the municipalities, not the airports, not the jails, not the police. I'm talking about the federal government. 26% goes to set-asides. That's including small business, woman-owned, veteran-owned, day businesses, minority. So those companies, those small businesses, which is the majority of the economy, are less than 100 employees. The contract manager at the federal government will say, I need a small business less than 250 employees, less than 100, less than 50. I need a micro business for this bucket of money for this project that's micro, less than 25 employees. So, and that's us. That's our audience. That's who we work with, right? So it's set aside
most of the companies,
already.
Yeah, we talk about that SME, small medium enterprise here in the United States. It's very interesting because we're talking, I mean, as an SME, you can do really well and have a very, very nice life here in this country, in the United States. Why? Well, because of course, like this system is built to maintain the growth of businesses and to employ people and to, create better quality of life. SME, under 100 employees, let's say under 5
Under
million,
100.
of under 5 million of annual sales, even under 10 million, still,
Revenue, yeah.
there's still a lot of companies that are in that space. So they can definitely take advantage of being able to use that as a strength, to be able to have a very comfortable business growth.
Right. Okay. So the first thing, as the slide pops up, is you want to have your house in order, right? You want to have your website. You can get a website any of these services out there with a domain name, the government's going to check you out. So have your website and your phone number ready to go. If it's your cell phone, fine. I do recommend like an office phone number. It doesn't have to be a landline. It could be a Google number. That way it's not your personal line. Okay. You want a professional email address. You do not want to be mike@gmail.com. Leave that for the personal stuff. You want to have a mike@govbidpro.com. And it's easy to do that because you'll have a domain name from your website and you just connect that to the Google email and just you'll point that. So mike@govbidpro.com is really a Gmail, but the domain name is pointing to it, and that does it on the back end. Google has that special sauce, right? You want to clean up your social media. Number 4, you want to clean up definitely LinkedIn. Government's definitely operating more on LinkedIn. They're checking things out. Make sure to add a few things, recommendations, ask for recommendations, be involved in LinkedIn. That's a good professional social media site. Facebook, not so much when it comes to government. I know government contract managers, they're not Facebook people. Your corporate structure, pivoting on that. You want to have your LLC, incorporation, your partnerships. You want to have that all set up. When you have all that set up, and by the way, you want your business banking also to be ready to go. You want to go into your local bank, have a relationship with your local banker, and have that business bank, because when you go to get that cage code, the registration number 7, registration in SAM.gov for a cage code and UEI number, guess what they're going to ask for? Number 1 through 6, excuse me. Right? They're going to ask for your business checking account. They're going to want your social media links. They're going to want your email and website and phone number and partners and their phone numbers. They're going to look back. What they're looking for when you register with the government, they're looking to see that you're not in North Korea, China, Russia, Syria, some of these other countries like Yemen. Libya is another one. They want to see that you are a company, that you have a UPS store address. Even if you're a small company, you have a UPS, you have an address in the United States. You have a driver's license in New York, Florida, Texas. You're an American. You pay taxes in America. You don't have any back child support. You don't have any back taxes, that kind of thing. And then the last piece is certifications. You want to go to the SBA, SBA.gov, and we can walk you through this, how to get you to become a woman-owned. There's a questionnaires. We can walk you through it. The veteran-owned piece, the answer's in the pudding, right? You have to go to the VA for that. The VA has to talk to the GSA, which is not easy because the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing sometimes in government. So the VA has to tell
Hopefully it gets better, my friend.
the SAM.gov people, right? The VA has to tell the SAM.gov people that you're a veteran. Great. Now there's veteran-owned and there's service-disabled veteran-owned. So there's 2 veteran-owned things. 8A is minority status, and hub zone is historically underutilized business zones. Those are very rampant up in the Northeast, like Buffalo and Cleveland and Detroit, but they do have them elsewhere. The states have them as well. Those are nice to have. The government wants new business growth in these hub zones. So they'll say, hey, let's put companies in these zones where there used to be chemical plants or steel mills. Now the business people show up, they need services from there. And there's growth where there used to be a dilapidated steel mill that's closed. So that's a positive. But we could walk you through all that in terms of registration. We could walk a client through that and get them all prepared. And we in fact have a package. That's a 3-month package. It takes a couple weeks to get registered. Right off the bat, the first 3 weeks is all this registration stuff. And people can go to our website. They could email me at mike@govbidpro.com. They go to our website, GOVBIDPRO.com, govbidpro.com. We've been in business 10 years. I've been doing this 20. Just to give a quick note, I was a sales manager and general manager of a MSP, managed service provider that dealt with physical security, surveillance cameras, did between 150 and 200 bids a year. And then we did the installation too. So I know installers and dealing with that, installed surveillance cameras. From the 200 bids, we landed on average about 30 purchase orders a year. So it is a volume game. You are competing. Okay, you are competing. But I will say this. It's a long game. It's a marathon. Working with government, it's a long-term thing. It's not an overnight. Be prepared to work with the government for the next 24 to 36 months with us. And I think it's great. And you know this. Number one, they always pay, and the government's not going anywhere.
No, not at all. Actually, one of the things I've seen, and we talk about this, even on the VA side, you have home care agencies, actually, and assisted living facilities, this sector basically, has been very stable, a lot of growth. They never have problems. Their VA payments come in. This is just basically for what I've seen, with clients. And the government needs us. Needs us as small business owners. So if you are a small business owner in any of the industries that we've discussed, please call Mike. Please, have a sit down, talk. You don't know where to start? No problem. Like Mike has all of the expertise, already doing this for over 20 years. First in the private sector, and then with a company, and then doing it with his own company. So you're getting a wealth of knowledge with Mike. We want to keep it short today, but I want to thank you for all of this information. We're going to get together again next week, and we're going to talk maybe about other industries, other sectors that the government needs. And feel free to ask any questions about, I want to know about this particular question on government contracting. I want to get more information. Feel free to reach out to us, or feel free to reach out to Mike. I really appreciate your knowledge. Thank you for this. And let's help small businesses and expand and continue to help the government sufficing all of their needs for goods and services, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to help people. Share the information with a complimentary consultation. Give us a call. We're here to help people. That's what we've been doing for the last 10 years. It's been great to help people all over the country. I look forward to our next week conversation, Andres, and we look forward to talking to the folks that are watching the webinar and the podcast. Thank you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Mike. And I will see you in the next podcast.